to a channel. It's Russian.
That's a tough one.
I need to hit one more. Right here.
I heard it. Nice.
Вы смотрите программу Ushanka Show.
Just a friendly reminder that my book American Diaries is available on Amazon.com, or shoot me an email if you would like to have a signed copy. Thank you. Well, that was my son Oliver chopping firewood in Ukrainian countryside. Makes my heart feel proud watching him applying all the skills that I taught him. Anyways, hello comrades and welcome back to Ushanka Show. My name is Sergey and I was born in the USSR. So today I would like to switch gears a little bit and tell you the story from the last summer when me and my son Oliver visited my mother in the village in northern Ukraine, and we had quite an adventure one night, and this is the story about that adventure. So many years ago, not many years ago, there used to be this site, Flickr. It's before Instagram and Pinterest pretty much kind of like overpowered it and killed it. I used to post pictures there from the village, and one time I had a message from a guy who saw my photos and he got interested in the village, and he ended up actually going to the village and looking at the area, and he ended up buying a building, this large building. Before World War II, it used to be a hospital built by one of the local landlords, actually his wife. She built a little hospital for the local peasants. It got blown up during World War II by partisans, and then in its place they built the local collective farm, like manager's office. So there was the big large building where everything was going on in regards to local collective farm. So that happened like in early 2000s, and only last year in the summer of 2018 we finally met. I went on a bike ride and I decided to swing by because I was just kind of curious to see what happened to that house, because I saw that a guy actually spent a lot of money fixing and remodeling, installing new windows, putting new fans. It's a huge building. Now it's like a private residence, so that's pretty unusual. So as I said, I went on a bike ride and I noticed the car was parked there, so I stopped by, met Ivan and his children, and so that was very cool. And what was also interesting, that his oldest son, I think he was like 15, he actually built his own little iron shop. So he had these little brick walls and a fire going, had a little electrical fan blowing, and then he was making different metal items like by hand. So that was pretty neat, and I really wanted my son Oliver to see that. So next day in the evening, I talked Oliver into going for another bike ride. Told my mom it'll take us like 30 minutes, so I wanted to swing by to see if Ivan and his kids will be home again. They said they will, and just to show him that little iron shop and just hang out for a little bit. And when we arrived to their place, I found out that Ivan was planning to go to the river, and it's about a couple kilometers, so over a mile, because they had a boat at one part and they wanted to move to the safer location where the other boats are located. It's like there's a problem over there that people steal each other boats. So he had it kind of hidden in one location, and he wanted to move it downstream where the most people now are using as a, I would say, parking, right? Like there's no ramp, but like a boat parking. And so that he was planning to go with his kids, and that boat actually was a motorboat, so he invited us to join. Well, I got excited right away because that was an awesome opportunity for my son to actually explore the river on a boat and motorboat. I spent a lot of days on that river fishing, and on all those years only a single time that I had a chance to actually ride motorboat, but that was outboard. And it was an amazing experience. So I was like, I talked my son into going. He was kind of skeptical because he's an American kid somewhere in Ukraine, nothing familiar, foreign language. The only person he can talk to is me. But he agreed, and so we joined him. Ivan said that his motorboat was a 6-person large boat, and they actually had it named Persephone, so that's a Greek goddess of I don't remember what. So that was kind of cool, and we're like, okay, let's go. So then he brought his outboard motor, and I kind of looked at it. It was very small, had a plastic propeller, and I was like, I wonder how big is the boat if this outboard is so tiny. So we actually had quite a large team. So we had 2 adults, Ivan and me, and then we had a total of 4 children. So there's a little girl, she was probably like 3 years old on a little bicycle, barefoot, just riding a bike. And then a kid, a couple of years younger than my son, with long hair, looks like a girl, but he was a boy. And then older guy that had the little iron shop, and to us. So we started carrying the motor. Ivan put gas in that little plastic tank, and we figured out it was too cumbersome and heavy to carry by one person, so we actually found a rope, found a stick, so we kind of put the stick on our shoulders, and the motor was hanging in the middle, just like hunters carry deer. And we walked through this abandoned part of the village that I showed several times. That's my grandparents used to live. And it was kind of sad because these guys, they called it the streets of ghosts. It had official name, Lugavaya Street, the Meadow Street, but now the new name was the Street of Ghosts. So we walk through that the street. I said it's a nice long hike, and having little kids, that was pretty slow and painful. And of course, it didn't help that it's not street anymore. It's basically, after a while, when we passed the last house that people still live, we had about a mile or so of abandoned homes, and road got really narrow. It's pretty much just like a path between overgrown trees and bushes. And so we have this bunch of kids in the tow. Girl was constantly falling behind, complaining, or getting distracted with some beautiful flowers or butterflies, which was cute. I'm glad I brought a bottle of water. Since I live in America for a long time, I started drinking way more water. And since I became a parent, I kind of think about it like, hey, it's going to be a hot day. I should bring water. They didn't bring any water with them. They just brought a watermelon. So I started sharing water with kids because they all got thirsty. And Oliver, my son, was constantly like, hey, Dad, look at this engine. It's dripping gas. Hey, Dad, it's dripping gas. And I was like, well, we think we overfilled the tank. So it's why it's dripping. So this is how we were moving along through this abandoned part. We walked by our old abandoned house, and we finally reached the end of the street. So it took us about an hour, and we just made probably a little bit over halfway of our whole trip. And suddenly we have this unpleasant surprise that it used to be a road there, way back, connecting two villages, our village and next village. So this dirt road was pretty much was made by locals. So the local collective farm will plow the field to plant wheat or corn, whatever. Then of course locals will drive their cars or motorcycles to make the road, and that's how it's happening every year. Now, since both villages pretty much abandoned these parts, there was no one, and it was a like newly plowed field, so it was no road, just a plowed field in front of us. So that was bad news for us because kids already getting tired, and that was getting late. Like sun was approaching the horizon, the forest on the west. So I know we have maybe about less than an hour of daylight. We still didn't reach the river, and suddenly we have this freshly plowed field, no road. A girl was barefoot and with the bike, so there's no reason she could ride through across. And other kids were barefoot too, I believe, because from my experience, sometimes if you plow the field, you have a wet soil or somewhat wet, and then if the sun bakes it, it becomes so hard. So it's almost like walking on hard, sharp rocks when you walk on that type of field. So I was very concerned if we can make it across this field, but we got lucky. Soil was really soft, and that was just almost a pleasure to walk across. Now, I actually offered to take a different route because we went with my son earlier to the river driving a car and found a spot that road was completely blocked off by fallen trees. But they said, don't worry about it. But unfortunately, we got in that spot and that was horrible because we had to climb over like 10 fallen trees blocking the road, dragging that outboard more with us and helping kids to crawl over. So by the time we got to actual boat, it was sun was already behind the horizon. Well, we finally got to the place where Ivan was hiding his Persephone motorboat, and it turned out to be just a regular flat bottom wooden boat, a little bit bigger than people normally have around here, but otherwise wasn't anything that I thought was like a real, I got Americanized. I had pictured like, aluminum factory built motorboat, but that was just another locally built flatboat. Of course, it took a while to get rid of the water that got collected after rains, and I could tell already that my son was not happy. He expected nice boat, clean, and it was, just dirty boat full of water, wet and slimy. But the worst news that we discovered that somehow the plastic tube connecting the fuel tank to the actual motor got busted, and that's why the fuel was leaking all the time we walked, and my son was keep on bugging me about drippage. So we lost close to half of a tank of gas, and that was a small plastic tank, and the tube that connected had a hole. So Ivan was planning to find some piece of grass or wheat to replace the plastic tube with that. So I was like, oh my god, we're so in trouble here. So I explained Oliver what's going on, and he got very upset, and I was like, okay dude, we'll wait maybe 30 minutes. I don't think they will be able to fix the motor with the grass stems, but we'll give about 30 minutes. If it's getting dark, we're just gonna call it quits and walk back. And I was really worried that my mom will start being upset and worried about us because there's hardly any cell signal, so I couldn't use my cell phone to call her that our 30 minutes turning into like 3-4 hours. So yeah, we were just like, okay, we'll wait a little bit, and if they can't fix the engine, the outboard, we just have to walk home. And suddenly we heard the sound.
Конечно.
Be the first to vote.
Honestly, I couldn't believe my ears, but they managed to fix the motor, and so we hop on the boat and we started our trip probably about a couple of miles, maybe 3 miles or so downstream. But Ivan had concerns that he was very low on gas, and we weren't sure if we're gonna make it. And it was getting darker and darker, but at least we were moving in the right direction, so that was great news. So our hopes went up, of course. We started moving, and just prior we boarded, hop on the boat. I ran out of water. I had one bottle and four kids. So younger boy, the one with the long hair, unfortunately, I don't remember his name. He just started drinking out of the river, and Oliver was just horrified. It was kind of funny to watch these different cultures because when I was a kid back in the 80s, 70s, that's how we used to drink, right straight from the river. No worries whatsoever. But he was horrified to see the kid is drinking water straight from the river. Although the river, I don't know about now, but it used to be pretty clean. And it was getting dark, and everyone was tired. Kids, except Oliver, didn't know how to behave on the boat, so they were constantly, oh, look, Daddy, there's a fish. And the little girl was just like almost jumping off the board, tipping the boat one way, other way. So I was freaking out about that and just kind of trying to figure out, as a former lifeguard, what would be my action if we flipped the boat. I was like, well, I gotta grab Oliver and maybe I'll be able to save a girl. But I don't think I can, save everyone because that was scary. And of course, the kids got hungry, but fortunately, we had a watermelon. So when the next time engine stopped running, and that one time as we ran out of gas, we stopped prior before once because that grass tube broke, fuel line broke. Second time because we got a bunch of weeds in our propeller. But then a little bit later, Ivan announced, okay, we're done. I'm out of gas. So we just started floating down the stream and just cut the watermelon, ate some. And then we tied up. Of course, we didn't bring any paddles either. It was insane. Like that famous saying, stupid decisions make great stories. That was the case. We just started, we found some rope. We used the flip-flop, tied the flip-flop to the stick and used it as a paddle and started moving forward. After we finished watermelon, everyone felt a little bit better. Oliver started smiling again. He really enjoyed having that. And then we just started paddling. And maybe in about 10-15 minutes, I noticed that familiar curve in the river, and I knew that we arrived to our destination where the other boats are parked. And it was getting dark. So we parked the boat. I suggested Ivan to hide the outboard motor somewhere in the grass and pick it up tomorrow morning because everyone was so tired and I really don't feel like carrying that thing all the way back. And it took us about 40 minutes to get back to his place, and I was pretty much in almost total darkness. But there was a fun thing. We caught a hedgehog. So yojik, we got these funny looking creatures. I don't know if America has those animals. And that was the very first time that Oliver saw a real hedgehog and could pick him up and hold in his hand. So that was a highlight of his trip, is the hedgehog. Watermelon and hedgehog. He said those two things he enjoyed, otherwise he hated it. Then of course we had to ride the bikes home as quick as possible, and I said I worried about my mom being worried about us. But when we arrived, she's like, oh, you guys finally home. What happened? And I was like, did you freaking out or something? She's like, no, I know you went on a bike ride, so I was just waiting for you so you can have dinner and wash your feet and go to bed. I was like, oh, good, because my wife would be probably calling cops and everybody else. Well, I can't really call there in the village, but yeah, my mom didn't worry too much. So that was pretty cool. So that was quite interesting adventure we had, and I decided to share with you. I hope you like the story. We'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. Hey, by the way, cool merch for cool comrades is available at the Ushanka store at teespring.com. And if you love my channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new, interesting videos about the life in Soviet